all the CT nurses yesterday. Do you know if there was a lot of CT nurses yesterday?
I heard, yeah.
There was?
Oh, you were asking me?
No, in the class.
Mrs. Curran said there were 10.
That's really
That's
good.
really good.
Okay, good.
So they had a good time. Mr. Cohen, my daughter, is like,
They made use of their stuck times.
I tried to drag my kids here. They literally wouldn't get out of the snow. They played in the snow for 8 hours yesterday. They built an igloo snowman sliding down streets. I was like, they were so happy.
good times. Yeah. So we're on page 25, and we're learning a minor from the Rebbe Rashab. As I told you, that it's from 1905. And it's a mimer that explains what is the difference between Amalek and all other nations. So, first of all, it explains that the other nations, the 7 nations, they represent the 7 different negative character traits. What does it mean to represent? It means that just like the Hashem created, thank you, Midas in Kedusha, that's why Hashem also created 7 Midas in Klippa. They embody all those 7 Midas of Klippa, which means that just like in Kedusha, there's love, which is for Hashem, for good things. So there's love and there's desire for inappropriate things. And just like there's Gevura in a good way, discipline, there's also Gevura like anger and other negative emotions in a negative way. So these klippas, the 7 klippas, it's all over the world. Every person has a little bit of it. But where is it sort of found? Where is the headquarters? It is found in these 7 nations, and from them it spreads to the rest of the world. So conquering the 7 nations, in essence, means conquering these 7 negative character traits. So it goes on to explain, just like with each individual, each one of us, then we see a person, even a person who violates Torah and does things against Torah, but what's the motivation is because they're driven by their physical pleasure, by their desire for physical pleasure. And that desire is so strong that it makes them forget about godliness. So he brought out the point that this is called Ruach Shtus. The Ruach Shtus is the part that even though internally this person doesn't really want to be disconnected from Hashem, but the Ruach Shtus makes him feel that no matter what I do, these things don't make me disconnected. But what causes him to feel that way? Because he's so obsessed with his taiva, with his pleasures, that the other things, it just doesn't register. He doesn't see it as a problem. So we are on page 25. We're doing the first part where it says Bays, and we are we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines to the bottom. To prove the point, he said we see that a lot of these people, when it comes to a special time, let's say a Ser Siman Tshuva, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or sometimes a Simcha, they become excited, they become inspired, and they regret a lot of the things that they did, and they make a decision to change in many ways. What does that show you? That the reason why they did what they did was because they forgot about their connection to Hashem. But when something happens that brings that back up to consciousness, then they're different. So clearly, it's only because they forget. Now he goes a little bit into that itself. Why is that? And so let's let's start with the word with Azois. This is the conclusion. Azois and therefore. So again, this is 7 lines from the bottom. The Pa'amim times Kishaniskar Elalakus, when he does remember godliness, the godly awareness rises to the surface, to his consciousness. Then he's able to let go of those desires and those passions and do something which is more ruchnius. Kikachi hamida b'amidas roish. This is the way it works with a negative character phrase. Shemitamtamim hamayach ba'alev. That they clog the mind and the heart. In other words, the more passionate I am about gashmizik pleasures, in other words, the more I develop a love and a feeling and a desire and a pleasure in materialistic things, the more I become insensitive to spiritualistic things. He doesn't feel godliness. This is the reason why Bepulas are Rahman al-Islam. And how did it all start? Even the way it all began, how did it begin that his desire for physical pleasure became so strong, so intense, that it overrides everything else and made him forget about godliness? Mainly because the lack of paying attention to serving Hashem in davening. If he would be davening, this bonus belakus, and meditate on this subject of godliness, which means he'd think about the meaning of the words and about the greatness of Hashem, and he'd think about it in a way that he wants that the light of Hashem should be shining in his mayach, and then he'd get excited. If a person davens and thinks about the greatness of Hashem, and it inspires him, that means, by definition, that my godly soul is more open. My godly soul is rising to the surface. If that would be that, he wouldn't have these passions for the gashmistic and materialistic things. And this is based on a quote from the Zohar, Tukva de nafsha, chulsha de gufa. Tukva means the force and the strength of the neshama weakens the body. And when the body is strong, it weakens the neshama. So if a person's desire for godliness is strong, then their desire and passion for materialism becomes weaker. Even though the Nefesh Habahamis has an argument that I came first. This is brought down in a number of places that in a certain sense, the whole idea that the Nefesh Habahamis is stronger seems to be something which, how could it be different? How is it even possible to overcome the Nefesh Habahamis? Why? The Nefesh Habahamis comes to a person at birth. And since we're little children, what's functioning mainly within us is the Nefesh Habahamis, eating and drinking and playing and enjoyment and pleasure and pleasure and pleasure. The only difference is, what is the pleasure? So when you're very small, the pleasure is from a squeaky toy. And when you get a little bit older, the pleasure is from a fire engine. And when you get a bit older, pleasure is from a game, pleasure from food, pleasure from money. But basically, that's the part in a person that's functioning full force. So Nefesh Habahamis argues and says, I came first, I was here, and I what's the word? I made roots here in the guf, and now you have no place here. So even though that's the case, nevertheless, Nefesh Elokis still was given the strength by Hashem, that in spite of that, the Nefesh Elokis could overcome the Nefesh Habahamis. This is even like Begashmias. Physically, who's stronger, an animal or a human? Animals are stronger than human beings. But human beings were given seichel, they were given intellect. And therefore, a human being with his intellect, he can conquer the nefesh, the animal. And so too here, the nefesh Elokiz has the courage to conquer the nefesh Bahamis. But in order to do that, I have to stimulate the feelings and awareness of Hashem. Where's the time and place to do that? That's davening. So again, you can feel Hashem when you're eating. You can feel Hashem when you're sleeping or going to sleep. You can feel Hashem when you're going out to do business. But in all these situations, that's sort of secondary. But when is the time and the place that this is now the time that I could stimulate this feeling? That's davening. So so it's only because the person is not spending the right time and energy on davening, so that allows the nefesh bahamis to overpower, and then he becomes full of all sorts of desires and passions for physical and materialistic pleasures. First, it starts off with Dvarim HaMutarim, the Malas Taivas Nafshe, that he's into things that are permissible. He wouldn't violate Torah, it's permissible, but he's obsessed with and indulges in enjoying the physical pleasure of Gashmis and Chumris. But Achakach, after that, it goes to the next step. The Sabbath Gam Kol Dover HaMutalei, Shein Tzorach Lazeh Klal. Then he comes to a place, no, there's a step that's missing. Then comes to a place where anything that's permissible, even if he doesn't really need it, he hears about something that's desirable, something that's pleasurable, he wants it. And then the Yitzhara comes one day and says, do this. Machar, the next day, comes and says, do something else, which is a little bit more deviating from the right path. Then it comes to a place where he has a desire and a passion for things that he never would have thought of before, a passion for things that are absolutely prohibited. And then Eni Yochel Lamed al Nafshe comes to a point where he can't stand up to it. The is Gabras and Nefesh Bahamis, because the Nefesh Bahamis became so much stronger. The mere fact that Nefesh Bahamis is filled with these passions makes the Nefesh Bahamis so much more stronger. And the Nefesh Bahamis becomes stronger, the Nefesh Elokiz becomes weaker. Like I said before, that the strength of the Nefesh Elokiz weakens the Nefesh Bahamis, and the strength of the Nefesh Bahamis weakens the Nefesh Elokiz. So it comes to a point that Nechlesh Be'esem, the Tukva, the Gufa, Choshel, the Nishmasa, the force and the strength of the Guf causes weakness of the neshama. V'zeu aribui atayvus mailim u'master u'machlish es nefesh alakis, which means when there's an abundance of persons involved in many different passions of physical, materialistic passions, this conceals the nefesh alakis and weakens the nefesh alakis. Ad sheshechech legamrei, till he forgets completely about the nefesh alakis. That's why he can do something which is clearly violating Hashem's will. But nevertheless, even this person that we just described, when he does become aroused, either he starts thinking about how far he is from godliness, or he thinks about how the greatness of Hashem in davening, or he sees some sort of a miraculous thing, something Hashem did in the world, which really jolts him to see, wow, here I see Hashem's presence. Like it says, and all the nations of the world will see as Yeshua Salakenu, how Hashem brought us salvation. It means it's something of a miracle that Hashem performed that's so open. He can also see this wonder. And he gets excited because of it. When that happens, he comes to tshuva v'loses mahamidus royos legamre. And again, we're living in a time that we see these things and we hear these things in such an open way, where people just recently by the teens, these hostages spoke how, and these are people who are not connected to Yiddishkeit before. And Dafka over there, this one had a siddur, this one made believe he was making kiddush, he'd made kiddush on water. I guarantee you his kiddush on water was more precious to Hashem than our kiddush on wine. And this one was thinking about the Shabbos candles. In other words, the awareness of Hashem, when that comes out, it overpowers everything. And we see what happened when they came out. So here's this person that shows that even before, when he was distant, it was only external. Deep inside, he also felt for Hashem, but it was only external. What does it mean, external? That the passion for all the Gashmizik things didn't allow him to feel godliness. That covered up on the godly feeling. Imagine all this time, a person, since he's born, the Nefesh Habamis is sort of exercising, so it gets stronger. And then he gets involved in all sorts of physical, materialistic pleasures. Nefesh Habamis gets even stronger. And the Nefesh Kids gets weaker. Nevertheless, in spite of all that, even if this is going on for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, Kasher Ur Havaya, when the light of Hashem shines, Mizbatul Hatekev Nefesh Habamis, the light, the strength of Nefesh Habamis and the force becomes bottle, it falls apart. Mizbatul Tavase, and that passion that he had before also falls apart. And the reason is, this proves that the main cause of his Gabras HaTaiva, why he was so indulging in all those passions, is Misad Heder Gila, because there was a lack of godly light. So this is just like Begashmis, we say a little light can take away a lot of darkness. Take this room. This is about, I don't know, maybe 15, 25 square feet of space. If it was at night, that means you have 25 square feet of space of darkness. Then someone lights a candle. How big is a flame? A little tiny flame. Yet the whole room gets a little bit lighter, which means a little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. When a little bit of godly light comes into a person, then all the power of the Nefesh Habamis becomes weakened. But taiva malemis is the taiva, it's the passion that conceals. So it's the passion for the physical pleasure and whatever it is that they're passionate about, whether it's honor or money or other kinds of pleasures, that covers up and doesn't let them feel. It's not that they feel and they say it doesn't matter. They just don't feel that their connection to Hashem. So the reverse happens, and the light of Hashem shines, the Nefesh Kids becomes revealed. And then the person will do complete tshuva. So these are the 7 nations. How is Amalek different? Now he's coming to explain how Amalek is different in that sense. Amalek is a different category completely. Nothing like these 7. Our sages say in reference to Amalek, he knows his creator, and he intentionally wants to rebel against him. Why does the Gemara say that? Maybe Amalek also attacked because they didn't recognize, they didn't feel. And the answer is, wait a second, let's take a moment and think, when did Amalek attack the Yid? They were in Mitzrayim for 210 years, slaves. The Gemara says Mitzrayim was the superpower of those days. Superpower, military power, wisdom power, black magic and sorcery. They were the most powerful in the world. And it never happened in the history of Egypt that one slave was able to escape. And here, all the Jews went out. The whole world heard about the 10 plagues. basically Mitzrayim, the Hashem washed the floors with them, 10 plagues, then came Kriyas Yamsuf. So the whole world saw godliness in this revealed way, especially those who lived not far. So Amalek, we can't say Amalek wasn't aware of godliness. There was such awareness that never ever happened in history before or after that Hashem was revealed in the world. So therefore, he's different. He knew who his creator is, he knew who Hashem is, and nevertheless, he intentionally rebelled against him. So this is different. Not he rebelled against Hashem because he forgot about godliness, because actually that's his intention, to be the opposite of what Hashem wants. He did not tolerate. This is again, we're talking about a klipa. The people were people like all other people, but there was a klipa in them that was driving them to attack the Jews. If you think of it, what was driving them? What bothered them? Nobody was bothering them. Nobody was taking away their land. Nobody was attacking them. They were innocent people coming out of Egypt. Why did they go and attack? And at the end, they got beaten and they were destroyed. And after seeing that Hashem did this to Egypt, weren't they worried that this might happen to them? And the answer is that obviously there was something driving them that was so strong that even though they would be destroyed, they couldn't stop. Yes.
Yes, when you just said, so, I mean, not that they were actively suicidal, but in a sense, they're willing to be, right?
Right. Or they were so passionate about whatever they were passionate about that they convinced themselves that they're going to be stronger. In other words, this is a klipa, sheyadea selikus, that even while he knows godliness in a conscious way, margish inyalaki, he feels godliness, yedeas ayekid elikus, he knows the preciousness of godliness, and nevertheless, mechaven limerbe, his intention is to rebel against him. Shereitza lies nifrit melikus, he wants to be separate from God, he wants to sever his tie with Hashem. There's Menagadelev, he wants to be an opponent of Hashem. He wants to oppose godliness. That's the nature of this klipa. Yeah.
Is this possible for a Jew to feel like this?
It's possible, yeah. In other words, it's possible for a Jew to have that klipa of Amalek in them. And this is being said in a more of a humorous way, but it was being said, the Rebbe mentioned by Fabrengen. There was a chassid of the Frierdiker Rebbe that he was, we would probably say, the biggest spiritual chassid. Now, the chassidim who were chassidim because they had Mesiras Nefesh, but I'm talking about a chassid who davened and learned and worked on himself, probably a Beinani of Tanya. He was called Rabbi Itcha de Masmid, that was his name. So he once said, so the Rebbe repeated this, the Rebbe smiled. He said something that the Frierdiker Rebbe did not really appreciate, but he said it. What did he say? That the only people that could be in this category, they know their creator and they're out against them, is the Lubavitcher Chassid. Because if you don't learn Chassidus, you don't really know Hashem. So the only ones who know Hashem are really the Lubavitcher Chassidim, and they're doing something wrong, so they're the ones who fall in this category. But again, it's a humorous statement. But apparently, in a humorous way, the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't like it. But the Rebbe didn't. Again, it doesn't mean a Yid can chas v'sholom become an Amalek. But like I said, Amalek it's like a powerhouse for a certain germ. Like I told you, just like you think of COVID, it started somewhere in the world. It was probably in China, as most people understand. And from there, it spread to the whole world. So there's the klipa of Amalek. That's something which is embodied in certain people. Hashem planted this in this nation called Amalek. But from there, it goes everywhere, which means we all the reason why there's such a mitzvah, erase Amalek and get rid of Amalek, is because we all have that kind of germ within ourselves. But it's not the source of it, it's just it's a manifestation of the original Amalek. So that means sometimes a person can have a situation where they know the emes and they know what's going on, and yet something in me is pushing me to go against it. That could be a Amalek on a personal level. So we can't say Amalek attacked because they didn't see godliness. Adrabe, Meir Gila Lakuz, by Amalek, godliness was shining openly. Sharei Kol Nisim, they saw all the miracles, the Niflois, all the wonders, the Yitzias Mitzrayim. Number one, they went out of Mitzrayim with all the 10 plagues that went on. Kriyas Yamsov, the sea split. Asher Kol Ha'umis Nispol V'Zbatlu Aidei Zeh. All the nations, it says in the Chumash, that all the nations were like wowed by this, and they were sort of they were under the spell of what happened, to the point that they were overcome with fear and awe for the Yidden. What does it say in Shir in Oz Yashir? Shamu Amri Gozan. All the nations heard, and they were overcome with fear. Not only that, there's the story in Tanakh with Yeshua that they were going to conquer Israel. So he sent spies, and there's a woman there that she's the one, Rachav, she helped them escape. But what did she say to them? That all the people in our country are terrified of the Jewish people because they remember what happened 40 years ago when they went out of Egypt. So imagine, it's 40 years later, and everybody's still shaking with fear when they hear the Yidden are coming because of the miracles that happened. Here, it just happened. It just happened days before, and they're already attacking. So you can't say they didn't know about godliness. There couldn't be more knowing than what they knew in those days. That means even, this is a klipa, that even if it sees godliness revealed, he stands in opposition to it, and he wants to sever his ties with Hashem, or the nagid, and to oppose Hashem. So why? He's not saying why. That's the klipa. That is the nature of this klipa. Yep.
So when we think of the Amalek inside us, how does that differ from the Yetzirah?
So again, the word Yetzirah is a general word. That Amalek is one of the Yetzirahs. It's a different kind of Yetzirah. So there's Yetzirah for food. So people eat not kosher food. There's Yetzirah for money, and people will do things not kosher with money. There's Yetzirah for Lashon Hara, so people will do that. There's Yetzirah for relationships that are inappropriate. So one of the Yetzirahs is Amalek. It's another way, another name, the Yetzirah. So in other words, if we have to define this Yetzirah, what is its motive? Any other Yetzirah, we know the motive. I want money. And even all the Yetzirahs put together, what they all want is one thing, pleasure. But this person gets pleasure from money. This one gets pleasure from power. This one gets pleasure from play sports. Everyone gets pleasure, but at the end of the day, all they want is personal pleasure. And if you would know Hashem, there was once a chassid that he said, if all the Baal Taibis, means all the people out there who are passionate about all the physical, materialistic pleasures, if they would understand the pleasure in understanding godliness, they drop all their Taibis and run to learn Chassidus all day. Like, this is the most pleasurable thing in the world. What could be more pleasurable than this? So the truth is that all they want is pleasure, but they think it's just like on a smaller scale. Let's say a person who all his life didn't keep Shabbos. The first time they hear about keeping Shabbos, they think you're just not being real. Are you telling me for 24 hours not to use the phone, not to go shopping, not to write anything down, and go on and on and on and on? How could you live like that? The same person, after they learn Torah mitzvahs and after they're keeping Shabbos, a few years down the line, you can hear them say, Shabbos, only Hashem, in his infinite, brilliant wisdom, could have thought of such a brilliant idea like Shabbos. One day a week, you have to drop everything and forget about everything, and it's such a peaceful day, like nobody else in the world has a day like that, like we do. So what happened? What changed? What changed was, before the person wanted pleasure, and now the person wants pleasure. I'm not talking about a person who does things just because Hashem said so. Let's say we're after pleasure, but before they thought the pleasure is by doing all those things on Shabbos. And now they realize the real pleasure comes from not doing all those things on Shabbos. So before a person has pleasure from the materialistic things, then they realize the pleasure comes from godliness. but Amalek knows all about it and knows about the pleasure of godliness and knows how this supersedes everything else. But still, what is Amalek? It's Hashem created a klipa that its nature is just to fight godliness. Doesn't want godliness to be known in this world. It's not understood. How could klipa stand up against godliness? Isn't there a rule that klipa, in the presence of godliness, just melts away? Like in the pasuk, just like wax will melt in the presence of heat. That's how klipa melt in the presence of Hashem. Just the presence of Hashem makes it melt. Alter Rebbe once told a story that he was traveling with a few of his colleagues and the Maggid Mezrich. And then they came to this inn. And Alter Rebbe said, we walked in this inn, and there were a lot of peasants there, older ones, younger ones, very young ones. And when we walked in, they began screaming at us and cursing, and it was horrible. But as the Mezrich and Maggid walked in, somehow some of them just couldn't, they disappeared. And then when he started, he said, we're going to have mincha first. Started to say Ashrei. As he said the first pasuk, Ashrei, and the second pasuk, the third pasuk, slowly they sort of disappeared. And then at the end of the davening, towards the end of Ashrei, there were still a few little ones screaming and shouting, but then they also all disappeared. The Alter Rebbe said it was a strange sight to see. But then after the davening, there's more details to the story. The Maggid actually came to get this innkeeper to do tshuva. And the Maggid said to them, you think these were peasants? What you saw were not peasants. These were klippas that were created by his averis. The Alter Rebbe said, actually, I was wondering, there were so many people there, and there was not one wagon outside. In those days, not today, if there's no car on the driveway, nobody's home. There's no wagons. Where all these people coming, weren't people, they were klippas. But when the Maggid walked in, because Kedusha walked in, the klippa began to melt. Again, there were bigger klippas, smaller klippas, stronger klippas, weaker klippas. So eventually they all melted. So he's saying, how could Amalek stand up against Hashem? If Hashem is hidden, okay. But if it's revealed, when there's a hot sun is shining, then wax has to melt. How do they not? This is like sort of an incredible chutzpah. The chutzpah, if you look up at Shmaya Mahani, there could be chutzpah even towards Hashem. Sheyachol lamed neged gila lekus. Kamayo ish, for example, a person, ha'ozba chotzuf, be'etzem, someone who has this incredible amount of chutzpah, and he stands up against somebody who's so much smarter than him, so much more brilliant than him, and he's arguing and he's putting him down, and it doesn't make any sense. It's totally not logical, but it's chutzpah that is actually illogical chutzpah that makes him stand up, and that's why this klipa is. Hashem created this kind of klipa. And we'll stop over here. This is the end of this part. That this is what defines Amalek, and this is the answer. When Mashiach comes, godliness will be revealed, right? Once godliness is revealed, all the nations of the world and all the klipas of the world will become godly. Because the only reason they were what they were was godliness was concealed. So once godliness is revealed, they'll all turn to Hashem. But Amalek, his issue is that he can't stand godliness. So even with godliness revealed, he'll still be fighting it. And therefore, he won't be able to, this kind of klipa will not be able to exist. Because the godliness revealed will not change him, will not transform him.
I don't understand how it can still have some sort of, sorry. Yeah, just just because it actively, I don't know, I don't understand. Like it fights godliness, but in the presence of godliness, it still fights godliness.
Right.
So so it is stronger than godliness then.
No, it's not stronger. We see the end was, of course, that they were defeated, but it means that its perception of self and its arrogance and everything about thinking grandiose of himself makes him stand up even against Hashem.
But how can it do that?
How?
Yeah.
The Gemara calls it chutzpah b'lei taga, which means chutzpah, which defies reason. It's not. It's as if his brain is out to lunch.
Right, but if there's pure godliness, like if it's then that's also above reason. Like if there's no logical approach, when godliness is there, everything just like dissipates. You can't like both are super rational in totally different directions,
Right.
but equally enough for the klipa not to melt in front of the godliness.
This clip especially, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
How is it that way it manifests, like say a poem was nothing, it was to murder everybody, like to kill all the Jewish people, so how does that fit in with, to like just like staff?
he didn't represent Hashem, and he wanted godliness out of this world.
So destroy the evil was killing Hashem.
Right.
I think so.
Rabbi Majeski.
Yes.
So when Mashiach will come, how will it be destroyed, this stupa? Like if it doesn't get destroyed by godliness being revealed.
No, Hashem will destroy them. I'm saying when we say destroyed by godliness, it's not really destroyed. The other nations won't be destroyed, they'll be transformed. In other words, they will recognize Hashem, like we're saying Aleinu, and they'll bow to Hashem, they'll accept Hashem's sovereignty, and they'll become different. But Amalek, even though Hashem is revealed, it won't become any different because Amalek is not moved by Hashem being revealed. So Hashem will have to literally remove him from the world. There's no place for such a clipper. This can be transformed. So now that we have everybody together, we'll do something Mashiach Hagula, but also Purim related. We'll learn a lot mamar from the Friedrich Rebbe. And if I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Yapi downstairs is baking some of that. Means making copies. It's coming out of the oven. There's one to start with, but there should be more coming up, I hope.
Do you see my tickle? It's so cool. Okay, put yours on.
I want to give an introduction of what you're looking at. Oh, because we have to Okay. Do you mind taking one and passing it down? Thank you. I just want to give you a little introduction about this. This is a mamar of the previous Rebbe. It's part of a book that's called Hasidic Discourses of the previous Rebbe. But there's something really unique about it, different than many others, and that is that during the 5 years of World War II, from 1940 till 1945, the Friedrich